with me, Jack, here on Slice and Dice. So today, this stream is obviously recapping on what happened in session 4. Now, if you haven't seen session 4 yet, it's up now on our Twitch channel. It was streamed live on Monday night. It will be going up on our YouTube very soon, but due to a couple of little technical things, it's not on the YouTube yet, but it will be coming. Hopefully it'll be up later today, if not tomorrow, so keep your eyes peeled for that. You can also catch up with all of our previous sessions and campaign diaries so far, all on the YouTube channel as well. And before I started today's Q&A thing, I just wanted to take a moment to kind of give something back, really, and pay tribute, if you like, to all of you lovely people who have been following and watching the channel, because during the streams so far, during the sessions, there's been a lot going on. I haven't really dedicated a time to kind of thank you all for supporting the channel, for following. It's really, really appreciated, and I hope it continues that way and you enjoy the content and keep on watching it. So, in fact, I'm going to name some names here because I've got a little list. From basically, these are all the people that have started following the channel since starting on Twitch. So in no particular order, they are Dave Jones VO, James and D6, that's James, Platt PPT, Martholio, Muppet Girl, Mr. Gramorn, Miles Felkin, Vivid Gaming TV, Kolokolsky and Drake Lazarus. Thank you all for following the channel, following Slice and Dice. We all really appreciate it. It really means a lot, and I hope that means that you keep enjoying the content and we can keep on pushing out these all of these sessions and this wonderful game and some crazy people playing this wonderful game, and hope that you all continue to enjoy it. So thank you. All right, now that soppy bit's out of the way, so session 4. So the lead up to session 4 really all happened in the previous session, session 3, otherwise known as a smutty exchange, because in that was really where the groundwork was laid for what was to happen this week. So the party that was then at the time 3 people, that's Seth the half-elf, Malar the deacon and Loxodon cleric, that's Elephant Man, and Fleeting Look, the turquoise tiefling, arrived in Half-Reach. They were just looking for some assistance, really, to get some people together, to some of the villagers maybe, or other adventurers in the area, to come and help them shift a load of rocks up by where they found the carriage that they arrived in, which the carriage belongs to Lady Helene Grenthorpe of the Crowflies, and it seems that the tracks are leading inside what appears to be a cave, but there seems to have been a landslide and a collapse, and therefore they can't get into the cave without some extra help. So they headed to Half-Reach and really spent the most of session 3 just kind of sussing out the area, of encountering the new members of the party. So now they're up to a party of 6, which is twice as big, and got some very interesting characters there. But I covered most of that, I think, in the last campaign diary. So once they were all banded together, they were then before leaving, actually, in the morning, they were ready to set off in the carriage back up the road to where this rockfall was, and they are stopped by this halfling, kind of film noir inspired character, Callie Shallows, and she's wearing this sort of brown leather trench coat type thing with a big old hat on, looking kind of shady, smoking a lot. Just playing into all the archetypes, really, for film noir. That's where I definitely got the influence for the character. And she's been looking into the manufactory, which is the other most significant building in the entirety of Half-Reach. There's the watchtower in the centre, which is obviously the largest, and some of the characters got to know that tower quite well last week. And then there's the manufactory, so it's a nice big warehouse on the edge of town with sort of stone walls with spikes over the top, so not a particularly welcoming look to it, and obviously quite a big complex as well, and that's a walled-in complex with extra buildings and, as well as the warehouse inside. Basically, Callie been looking into the warehouse because her employer has reason to believe that Pat Galwright, the owner of the manufactory, is hiring slaves, and slavery is illegal in Buracrin, and apparently her employer wanted to find proof that this was the case, and apparently just grabbing some people claiming to be slaves wasn't going to be sufficient evidence. So instead, she wanted something in writing, and preferably in Pat's own hand, so they can incriminate himself with evidence. Being that the manufacturer is meant to be a legitimate business, it'll be keeping a ledger, which is how the officials will be able to work out like tax deductions and so on from this business. So Callie's basically employed the party to infiltrate the warehouse and get a hold of Pat Garright's ledger, in the hopes that within there there'll be evidence of something. There'll be something that doesn't add up, which will point towards him basically buying slaves. There'll be something encrypted in there which will indicate that perhaps there's a shady deal going on of some kind. So that's the theory, and that's what she has asked them to do. So, unbeknownst to me, the party outside of the game had having some chats together and trying to work out a plan between themselves, which they then spent the first part of session 4 enacting. And to be fair, I think it was quite a solid plan. It had a few things that went wrong, but for the most part, it was quite a good plan. And one of the things I found that's really great about building an encounter like this, where you give them the information first and they're trying to get into an area, rather than giving them an encounter where they just kind of stumble from one accident or one encounter to the next. This one, because it was a static location, they could then plan how they were going to get in and do a recce, assess the area, a bit of reconnaissance, and work out their best move. And it was also an excuse for this party of adventurers and slightly odd folk that haven't really spent a lot of time together, and in fact for the 3 newest party members, they've spent no time with this group at all. So it's a really nice opportunity for the whole party to gel together and finally kind of get that become a team rather than just a series of individuals who happen to be working towards the same goal. So the fact that they were planning their encounter and how they were going to infiltrate the warehouse was really gratifying, actually, to know that they had spent that time planning. And it was also obviously leaning into the characters' various strengths as well. And again, that was kind of quite rewarding as a DM to see that the players did this off of their own initiative, that they decided this is what we're going to do. Let's make a plan and let's do this. This must have been a good encounter to build. So their plan was basically to use Neris, the High Elf, who has a bit of a penchant for fire, loves setting things on fire, a bit of a pyromaniac. I'm not sure, actually, maybe not loves setting things on fire, but just happens to be able to set a lot of things on fire for some reason. So I thought, we'll lean into that, we'll set something on fire, and it'll be a nice big distraction, which will hopefully lure the guards out of the complex because they'll want to put the fire out, or assist in putting the fire out. Meanwhile, the more stealthy members of the party could then sneak into the warehouse unannounced and unnoticed, and break inside, grab the ledger, and get out. Nice. I mean, I may be paraphrasing, but that's the kind of gist of the plan from what I understood. To be fair, nice, simple, straightforward plan, solid. One of the things they hadn't checked was basically what could be set on fire. Now, in session 3, I had mentioned that the walls around the complex were made of stone. I think they forgot that information. Quite a loud car. I think they forgot about that information, and so assuming that most of the stuff there was made out of wood, they, actually no blame on them at all, assumed the walls were made of wood as well. So once they realised that the walls are made of stone and can't really be set on fire, you could see the faces were starting to drop. It was great. And then they were asking, well, what can we set on fire? And I was like, well, there's the shop. And they're like, okay, that's probably not a good idea. There's probably people inside there. And the only other thing in the vicinity was the carriage that they were in, the carriage belonging to Lady Helene Grenforth. And after some convincing of Malar Shade Creek, the Loxodon, they did in fact set fire to the carriage. Now this is going to be interesting. I wasn't expecting them to do this because, one, it's a method of transport that means that they can get to places quicker. Two, it's a significant item belonging to a noble, belonging to Lady Helene Grenforth, the noble that in fact Malar's meant to be meeting up with, and so he wouldn't want to sort of set a bad first impression by setting fire to her stuff. So an interesting quandary there for the players, but we'll see how that affects things going forward. And also, I think one thing that may have been slightly overlooked was the fact that they were. This was in the daytime when all this happened, by the way. That they detach the horses from the carriage and then go and tie them up outside the tavern and then set the carriage on fire. Now, obviously, wanting to keep the horses safe, that's not a problem. I don't have a problem with that. That makes total sense. Like, you wouldn't want to unnecessarily just burn horses alive. That's pretty horrific, kind of bordering on psychotic. But the problem with that is that in the commotion and the excitement, they've all run inside the warehouse and they've left the horses tied up outside the tavern, and the carriage is now being burnt down. So, anyone could probably put two and two together here and say, well, something isn't right here because this thing's burnt down and the horses for it are tied up. Something doesn't add up about that, because when the carriage caught fire, the horses were nowhere near it, and in fact were already tied up. So there's something a little bit fishy about that, which I don't think would take a genius to spot. But speaking of genius, one of the extra bits of this, although I made this plan sound very simple, it was the little things that they put into the plan that really rang true and really struck a chord with me. I found it very entertaining, as did the viewers as well. And that was, so Nera's obviously hiding, setting the thing on fire. That's what she does. Fair enough, that makes sense. But then you've got Malar and Fleeting Look both assisting using thaumaturgy to, Malar uses thaumaturgy to increase the flames, so it burns even brighter and burns up the carriage a bit quicker. But then Fleeting Look decided to, Dan decided that he wanted to, change things up a little bit and add another layer to this fire, and basically use thaumaturgy to simulate the sound of children like screaming. It's just so dark, and considering he's playing a paladin, guys, he's playing a paladin, but it's hilarious. And again, going to be some ramifications there, because you've got the sounds of children screaming for about a minute before it gets cut off, and then searching through the wreckage, there will be no remains at all of anyone inside. So either they've been completely burnt up into nothing, into dust, or they never were there to begin with. So that's going to be an interesting one for the guards when they look into the guards of Half-Reich, the Republic Guard, when they start looking into that. Could be interesting. So that part of the plan went very well. Brucon and Seth, so Brucon the dwarf monk, and Seth the half-elf rogue, being the most stealthy and sneaky and dexterous of the group, they decided that they were going to be the ones to break in. So I had described in the previous session that there was a building on the corner made of stone with a flat roof that's about 8 feet high, but it was within the complex. It was on the other side of the spiked walls, so they'd still need to get over the walls to get to it. It was just kind of hugging against the spiked walls. So when they went in, or so to say, when they went over, it was going to be a difficult check to try and get up there without any equipment. Wouldn't you know it, Bart, playing Brucon, rolls a natural 20, so he got 25 in total. And I had sort of written this down in the adventure that 25 was what they needed to get over that wall. So by chance, managed to get over that wall and then release down a rope for Seth and then pull him up. So very, very lucky. Fair play to them, though. It worked. So again, this part of the plan is all working really well at this point. The distraction outside with the fire, the guys on the roof, they get a great look out over the yards. They can see everything that's going on from up there unnoticed while they're sort of prone on the roof. And they see 2 sets of guards with 2 dogs each. So there's 4 dogs and 2 guards in the yard, as well as some slaves who are chained up by the arms and legs, not to each other, just to themselves. So that this restricts their movement, but they're still free to working within the yard. Anyway, it's then that things start to fall apart, because they were hoping that the guards were going to be distracted by the fire and would go out to try and put it out, when in fact the guards within the complex stay put. They look out at the fire and wonder what's going on there. Definitely distracted. However, they don't leave their post, because they're being paid to do a job. They've been paid to stay there. they're not the nicest of folks within there. They're kind of mercenary-like. They weren't going to take an interest in what was going on outside the walls, and of course they had to be supervising the slaves as well. So that's the first part of the plan that kind of goes wrong for them, and they pick themselves up and they go, okay, right, they're distracted. We can still sneak around into the warehouse. Of course, what they hadn't anticipated was that within the warehouse there would be more people, and while they're within the whilst they're within the complex, Seth kind of realizes this because he sneaks down, scuttles off down to the other end, and then he can see inside, and there's 3 of these guards playing poker within. They're playing dice, not poker. They were playing dice, but anyway, they were gambling, so there was a lot of coins on the table and things like that. So again, their distraction hasn't completely worked, so they're still going to have to get past those 3, although those guys are playing dice and not going to be particularly paying attention to what's going on around them. They've still got to get round a lot of people, as well as the slaves, of course, as well, to get inside the warehouse where they assume the ledger would be. Now, there are a few ways that they could have entered into the complex other than hoofing over the roof onto the top of what turns out to be the slaves' quarters, which is what they did. They could have also jumped over the walls, which would have been a slightly easier check, ironically, than climbing up to the roof, because it's not as high to get over the spiked walls, and so you don't have that extra distance to be able to get up to. But of course you're a lot more exposed because you don't know what's on the other side until you land, and then something and if you fail the check you get impaled on the wall. So it was probably good that they avoided that. There was going through the shop, which didn't occur to the group until Pat Galwright came out of the shop, and those outside, so Neris and Fleeting Look first, went inside the shop whilst he was distracted. I'll get to that in a sec. There's also the service entrance, which was noted last time, just a big reinforced wooden gate that turns out it was barred from the inside. And there was one other which the party probably wouldn't have noticed unless they'd really thought about this and sort of looked into it a little bit. But I can reveal that now because that's what this is all about. I had signposted to Seth and Brucon as they went round the corner to then go jump onto the roof that there were a few buildings. There was the most audacious buildings, like a manor house, as well as these smaller houses in this one area. And there's also a well. Now, if they looked into the well, although there's no easy way down because there's just a rope and bucket in that one, there was an easier entrance somewhere else, which I won't tell you where that is yet because it may come up next week. But it was then signposted much later on when they entered the warehouse that there is in fact a well within the warehouse as well, which they use to get water, and those 2 wells are along the same watercourse. But I'll touch on that in a bit. So with those 2 watercourses, they could have actually got in undetected using that well, and they would have ended up slap bang inside the manufactory. But of course, you know, they didn't know without doing a thorough investigation. They wouldn't have known that there was a well within the manufactory to start with, and knew that the 2 were connected. But it's the secret entrance that they didn't know about. Hey, it happens. Anyway, so Seth manages to get inside, sneak around, gets a good look, undetected, being a roguey rogue. The problem is that when Brucon goes down into the complex, he makes a bit of noise because it was sort of a rope and dagger was attached to the roof of the rope so he could abseil down, and he failed his check and slammed into the wall as he came down, which then drew the attention of the guards and dogs. Now, they didn't see him at this point, but they were lured over to where he was. And in this time, he manages to break down the door, because he happened to be next to the door to the slave quarters, breaks the door down, and then runs inside and hides under a bunk. Unfortunately, he's not detected even by the dogs, but it was a close call. But at this point, I think the 2 of them then realised that, this plan has gone south very quickly, and there is going to have to be a fight here without getting through. Now, they could have got through without a fight, but I think how things transpired, because of a couple of failing on rolls, it just looked like there wasn't going to be another alternative at this point without backing out completely. So inevitably they ended up fighting the guys inside the complex. They fight off the guards. They really didn't want to kill the dogs. James, who plays Seth in particular, didn't want to kill the guard dogs. And then in the end, he ended up killing 3 of the guard dogs, I think. No, sorry, he killed 2 of the guard dogs, with a third one also dying by fleeting Look's hand as he shouted Seth at the top of his voice, which is, again, a lovely comedic moment. They did spare one, though. Brucon, doing a bit of judo and doing a very impressive grapple sort of shove check, lobs the last of the dogs over the wall, which I just thought was great. So it's like, let's do it. And that means that one has technically been saved and lives to fight another day, but we'll see how that ends up going later on. So after that little scuffle, then through all the commotion and Seth blowing he finally, in the very first session, he picked up a bone horn, which turns out is a Richery artifact. It's what the citizens of Richery carry around with them, this bone horn, kind of ornately decorated with some bronze. And he blows on the horn basically to alert the guys out the front. So that's Malar, Nerys, Fleeting Look, and Leoberin. Unfortunately, Marshall couldn't attend this session, so I was playing Leoberin. But anyway, to alert them all basically that they need help. Now, he's never used the horn before, so they could have thought a number of things, but the fact that the noise was coming from within that complex was probably a sign enough that they need to get a move on. So after doing that, it had that effect. It definitely got the attention of the guys outside. However, it also got the attention of the guards who were playing dice inside, and it just meant even more comeback. Basically, that whole lurching from one encounter to the next accidentally is kind of what happened in today's session. Just things started to go wrong, and it's like, we've got to fight our way out. So they did that, and they managed to dispatch the guards without too much of a problem in the end. I think with all 6 of them, it worked quite well, and particularly there could have been a much worse combat out the front with the guards and Pat Galwright, but that was diffused quite well by the party. So what happened was that Pat was obviously insisting that the guys put out the fire, and the guards were also trying to put out the fire. And then, whilst Malar distracted him from the fire and made him kind of look away to other things, he then kind of gave a signal behind him so that Fleeting Look could then sneak inside, and he did so. But Nerys, being on the opposite side of the road, quite far away, also wanted to get inside, seeing this opportunity, and decided to just run across. And she said, I'm just going to dash across. Because if you're using your action to dash, you're not using it to be stealthy. Like sprinting across something, it's not the most subtle way of doing things, but it is certainly the quickest. So she managed to get across, but the problem is that she ran straight past all these guards, these 2 guards who were putting out the fire, who then, so carriage on fire obviously, looks like it could be arson. Then seeing a character they'd never seen before just running across, with kind of these reddish eyes, they may have noticed that, running across the road like at a brisk pace across them and away. Innocent people don't run, so that in itself looks a little bit suspicious at this time. And they of course turned around and went, whoa, come back here, and then started chasing after her. And it was then that Malar and Nerys decided, again, let's lean into the intimidation here. I think Malar used thaumaturgy to make his voice boom and kind of get these like scary eyes going, and Nerys used it to basically make fire. Used prestidigitation to make fire appear all over her, and basically look like she was like this flaming demon. And fair play, it worked. The 2 of them together, and then Fleeting Look being a blue tiefling, which is obviously kind of a devilkin anyway. Was quite intimidating. The 2 guards ended up fleeing, and that worked perfectly. What didn't work so well was that Pat Galwright wanted to have a go at them before this happened, and just had heard the door slam to his shop, and was like, whoa, and was about to go over and investigate what was going on. And it was then that me playing Leoberin used the one spell slot he's got to just put the guy to sleep. And again, it worked so great, but the fact that after all the encounters in this week's session, Mal said, "Oh, I'm going to go back out there and just check on Pat," and he's gone because sleep only lasts for 1 minute as a spell. Yeah, that's it's going to be interesting next week. Where has Pat gone? He magically put to sleep, then woken up. Where's he gone, and what's going to happen next time? So that's going to be fun. Anyway, so after that, the guys from outside managed to unite with the guys inside. They fought off all the guards, and then they got inside the warehouse itself. And it was there that kind of the stage was set to have this one cloaked figure, basically using the kind of cultist or cult fanatic, I think, model from the monster manual, but this was a halfling kind of cultist standing on top of a kind of gangway up a ladder within the warehouse, right at the back, so you can see everyone coming in, and he summons this spiritual hammer that's kind of made out of shadow and darkness. It's just a very a dark and almost opaque but kind of swirling mist weapon appears and starts attacking the party, and what could have been quite a dangerous encounter, I think between the group, they managed to sort out and dispatch the threat without anyone going down, which could have easily not been the case, but they managed to deal with it very well. And in fact knocked the cultist unconscious rather than killing him, because obviously seemed to be a character of interest with his particular abilities, unlike the rest of the guards that they ended up fighting. So through much trials and tribulations, they managed to overcome the threat inside. They knocked him unconscious, and then a final guard, a red tiefling, who had been hiding in there were two buildings, sort of two structures at the back of the warehouse, kind of like office or cabins. This tiefling appears from one, having noticed the fight hasn't gone particularly well, and then tries to grab all the stuff on the table, this wooden box, all of the coins from the dice game that he'd been playing, just trying to grab it all, and then make his way out. Unfortunately, Neris wasn't going to let that happen and tripped him over the quarterstaff, and then has him at her mercy. And by the end of the session, they now have two hostages to interrogate at the beginning of the next session. They still notably haven't found the ledger, but they have found the Stonebreaker. Now, the Stonebreaker, I forgot to mention, was basically the real reason that the group are looking into this slavery thing for Cali Shadows. Obviously, for some of the heroes, they think slavery is bad and they want to, obviously set free the slaves anyway and be all heroic. But the crux of it and the real sort of turning point, I think, for all of the characters to sweeten the deal is that this item, the Stonebreaker, it's basically like a battering ram that's been repurposed for smashing through rocks to improve mining efforts within Burikran. There was a bit more lore on that, which I talked about in the last campaign diary. But anyway, that's going to be really useful for them, because of course, to break through that rockfall, that Stonebreaker is going to be very useful indeed. So that really sweetened the deal and sweetened the pot for them, and that's really what they're after. In fact, a couple of the players were saying to me, "Oh yeah, we've got the slaves now. We set them free. Like, this is kind of done." It's like, whoa, hang on a minute. You were tasked with getting the ledger, so they still need to do that, or else Callie's not going to be impressed and not have the evidence that she needs. So we'll see what they do next time on Monday, see if they still go for the ledger or whether they kind of interrogate these two guys, see what they know, and then move on. One of the things I've been alluding to with these guards, including the ones that they've captured, are that they're not Burikran residents. They're foreign. They're definitely from afar. So we'll see. Hopefully they'll find out a bit more information about that, where they come from, who their employers are, aside from Pat Galwright, and kind of what their purpose is and what's going on there. Because there's going to be some interesting plot points there, which may come up quite a bit more later on in the story, depending on obviously what the players choose to do. But there's some interesting machinations going on. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. Anyway, so so we're leaving them with that, with two hostages, and as yet an incomplete mission. All very exciting. So yeah, not a lot to say about this particular session, because it really was kind of, there wasn't a lot of chat. There was mostly combat, whereas session 3 was all kind of exploration and information gathering and lore. This was quite combat heavy. Not that that's a bad thing. It was nice to have a balance between the two, but it means that whilst not a lot happened, it took a lot of time for that to happen with the mechanics and dice rolls and so on. But it was definitely a lot of fun, and I know that the players enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. If you haven't seen it yet, catch it up on our YouTube and of course on Twitch. It should be up on YouTube later on tonight, if not tomorrow. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. Tune in on Monday where we'll be having the next session, at session 5, live here on Twitch at 6 p.m. Also, keep on getting your recommendations in for #FateDice. So now I think we've now got quite a few suggestions, but we're still looking for more, and I know that you've got some great ideas out there for apocalyptic events or other sort of world-changing stuff, or even something small, just some kind of it could even just be a random encounter, like you could say a troll appears, for instance, something as basic as that. But just anything that'd be a little bit of interesting. Get as creative as you like with it, and I look forward to reading them. So yeah, get those in to us at slice&d6. It's at slice&d6 on any of our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and use the hashtag #FateDice, and we will I will read away and we'll add them to the list. Anyway, until next time, thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you on Monday.